Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha, wherever you are around the world. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. My two co-hosts, Mr. Rather Be Squidding, Mr. Michael Mataluni. Welcome. How you boys doing?
Doing well. I think you're muted, Mike.
Yeah, you are muted. You're starting the show like Dan Zetterstrom from That UFO Podcast, which, by the way, comes on right after our show. So don't go anywhere if you're live on KGRA.
You're like a segue artist.
I try, man. I'm getting better at it. That is for sure. After all of the awkward moments on this show that we've had, woo! Segues
only takes
are like
300
my jam.
episodes.
Yeah, 300 episodes to get the segues that good. Which, by the way, we just celebrated. If you haven't seen that, KGRA audience, please check out our YouTube channel. We've got all sorts of cool stuff going on there. And also, just by the way, our shows are also going to be premiering after, I believe, John B. Wells every night, every show that we do, except for the Singularity Lab. We'll see what happens. Maybe we get the Singularity Lab on KGRA. I don't know. Well, maybe talk to Bill. I don't know. All right. Okay, so before we get started, of course, we've got some bills to pay, things to let you guys know about. Of course, we've got a podcast. It's available on Spotify, iTunes shortly after the show. We've got our Patreon. So if you want to support the show, super chats are open if you want to support the show, which we've already got one, a $50 super sticker from NeuroStream. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. You guys absolutely love the show, and you show it with your money, your hard-earned cash, and I cannot appreciate it enough. Honestly, it is the biggest compliment, but it's not the only way to help the show. If you can't do stuff like this, that's totally cool. Just like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, so that way you don't miss a second of the action here on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Between this show and Michael's show, we do shows 5 days a week, so make sure you like and subscribe every single one of these gentlemen. And Rather puts out content sometimes. You do it like once a week, essentially, right, Rather?
Yeah, every week or two. Try to. Yeah.
And so Rather is doing some awesome content as well. So, between these three people here in front of you, your UFO, UAP technology and science is covered. Speaking of, we got a great show today. Gentlemen, are you ready for this show? I don't know.
I'm stoked. I mean, we've had this gentleman on the show quite a few times, and every single time he comes on, he's got some new and interesting. So if you're not somebody who follows Vice Magazine, or if you're not somebody who follows this UFO topic, you're going to love this guy because he's going to turn you right onto it.
He definitely is. So without further ado, let's bring him on. Mr. Daniel Otis, contributor to Vice Magazine, and that and among many other publications out there. Daniel, how you doing? Welcome back.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and congrats on 300 episodes, guys. Well done.
Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Yeah, between me and Michael's show, we've done over 300 episodes, and the show is growing every single day. By the way, we're going to be doing Discord after the show. So if you guys want to come hang out in the Discord, Michael, I know for sure Michael and I will be there for at least an hour, I'd say. Who knows? Sometimes they keep us around longer if the conversation is really good. So don't forget to check out the link for the Discord at the bottom. So Daniel, you've put out a couple of articles here in the last month or so, and I know we had you on here for Chris Rotowski's sort of collection of UAP military data from the Canadian Air Force and other apparatuses, and how it's sort of just gone to him for the last 15, 20 years. And now we've got, this is really cool. And we're going to play the video, I guess, and we'll sort of describe what's going on for our radio audience.
Yeah.
But there's a dash cam video from a Canadian police officer. And was this in 2000? Did I get this right? 2011?
So yeah, this was in April 2011, 10 years ago. And this happened in Selkirk, Manitoba, which is a small city about 30, 40 kilometers north of Winnipeg. So this police officer was on a overnight traffic duty, routine kind of thing. And while he was sitting there in his cruiser, he saw what he described as a unidentified bright yellow and orange light in the sky. He turned on his dash cam, and there you have it. So, the dash cam footage itself, it's a light traversing a dark sky. Perhaps nothing revelatory, no unusual movements seen in the video. But here's something interesting I really wanted to share with you guys. After that story was published, I managed to get the police officer on the telephone. And he told me that, the film portion of the video was really just the first part of it. And that after the object went off camera, it then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared. So, before I talked to him, I was really convinced that I was really looking at one of those paper floating lanterns, that are so often misidentified as, true UFOs. But after hearing that, those additional details directly from the officer, it, really had me scratching my head as to what this could be.
Well, I loved the fact that during this footage, and I don't know if we need to play it. I've got the link in the description for you guys. And Dan, if you could also throw that into the chat so folks could check it out, because I don't want to alienate our radio audience. But the thing I found incredibly interesting about it was that the police officer took the dash cam footage, or the actual dash cam, and then pointed it at and zoomed into what he was looking at, because it clearly caught his attention. And what time at night was this? 2 a.m?
This would have been approximately 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I think the video shows a time about 3. I clarified it with the officer. He said that the clock on the video was a little off, but the date was on. So it was about, pitch black, 2 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, this light comes across. And again, I spoke to him after the story was published, and in our conversation, he told me that initially he thought that he was observing a aircraft on fire. And the reason he started filming was because he wanted to collect evidence. He was expecting this thing to come crashing down any minute,
wow,
and people to be dead, etc. And so he started filming as evidence. He wasn't filming thinking he was filming something anomalous. It was only after the object went off camera, he said, that when it really just changed trajectory and shot straight up, that it left him really wondering what he'd just seen.
I find this really cool, but also frustrating too, right? Because it always seems like the really cool part is always right after the video ends. Did he give an excuse or like a reason for why he stopped recording and didn't get that last bit?
He just said that he was trying to keep his eye on it, literally because he thought it was an aircraft going down. And as I recall from the interview, he just said, the camera wasn't picking it up, so he just stopped trying. Like he was keeping his eye on it. This was a RCMP officer, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. This is a federal police force in Canada, and he thought he was collecting evidence, and he thought, better pay attention to this thing. Well, and then it just shoots up in the air. So he says.
And did you say there were multiple videos from Chris? I think Rutkowski, also got a video.
Yeah. So the copy of the video I obtained was leaked to me by somebody who was working in the Canadian government's Department of Transportation at the time. So he saw this report come in, and a report was also filed with the Canadian Air Force, a squadron that's attached to NORAD, the Joint Canada-US Air Defense Group. So this guy at the Department of Transportation saw the report come in, and he saw that nobody was doing anything about it. He called up the officer, and the officer provided him a copy of the video. 10 years later, he sent it to me. So there was one video. Interestingly, from the conversation, there was a second police officer that witnessed this. And in terms of Chris Rutkowski, this sort of ties into the other story I published recently. Chris is really one of the most prominent UFOlogists in Canada, for sure, and a well-respected ufologist. And basically, through my research, it turned out that Chris had been receiving UFO reports directly from the Canadian government and our, NORAD Air Force squadrons, that he had been receiving this stuff directly from them for 20 years. And in this particular case, in 2011, Chris received reports from both the Air Force as well as Transport Canada, he told me, including the officer's contact details. And 10 years ago, he interviewed the officer and got a copy of that video. Chris says that he's shown it at conferences and, shown it to researchers and students, but it had never really been published in a sort of widespread way like this until that Transport Canada source gave me a copy. And interestingly, the copy Chris had was exactly the same, 55 seconds, no shorter, no longer. So, and they both Chris and my source said that they obtained their copies directly from the officer.
Got it. And then, so when the officer turned this in, you mentioned something that he was a little frustrated, like he didn't get the response he was looking for, or people weren't taking it seriously. Is that?
Well, it wasn't that. He just didn't get any response. So what happened was at precisely at the time, he called into, police dispatch. Police dispatch called air traffic controllers at the closest airport in Winnipeg. They at the time said they weren't picking up anything. The officer also provided a report to the Canadian government's Department of Transportation. He provided a copy of the video to them. And as well, the air traffic controllers in Winnipeg also notified the Air Force and NORAD. So these reports were circulated, through all the relevant agencies. But the only thing he ever got back was an informal call from somebody at Transport Canada, the government transportation department, who was my source. And that was it. There was no official follow-up. Transport Canada believed that the guy had just mistakenly seen an aircraft. But, according to my interview with the officer, aircraft don't shoot straight up in the air.
Right. And unfortunately, we just don't have the video evidence.
I know.
To back that up.
and it feels like he was so close to it too, right? Like if he had just adjusted the camera one more time, maybe we would have caught it. But my question is how come this took 10 years to come out? And what other information are we sitting on potentially here?
Well, that's the amazing thing. I first found this report in the Canadian government's aviation incident database. So anybody who's been following my work, a lot of the cases I've been uncovering and then getting more details through, Freedom of Information requests, those are all found in this Canadian aviation incident database. And that contains, UFO sightings of weird lights and objects from major airlines, Delta, Air Canada. There was even a Canadian Air Force plane that saw something weird in July. I found this report in there, and the report that was in this public database from the RCMP officer specifically mentions the video. I'd been frantically looking for this video, I guess for 6 months now. I filed access to information requests. I was told by the Department of Transportation in Canada that the video had been deleted and destroyed after being retained for a number of years. And I was just on this wild search until a source who worked at Transport Canada at the time called me up and said, "Hey, you want to see this video?" So, even though the video itself is not extraordinary, I think what for me is really interesting here is that, a federal police officer saw something unusual, recorded it, reported it to all the right authorities, and then just didn't really hear back from anybody. There wasn't really sort of any attempt to provide him with an answer. They didn't even try to provide him with a conventional answer. There was just no follow-up. And for me, I think that was the most significant part of this story. For all these men and women in uniform, whether they be officers, soldiers, pilots, in Canada, if they see something weird, generally they just don't get any follow-up or answer.
Well, and this is, when you were on last time, this was one of the things that you were incredibly frustrated by. And a lot of the folks who have been reporting this were frustrated by. Are you seeing any signs of this shifting, or is it's all about doing the legwork to track these things down and really push out the knowledge that you are somebody people can reach out to when they have something?
Well, that's it. There's no sort of official change that's happened. I know in the United States, you folks have had all these pretty wild developments, with, really intense official interest in the subject. In Canada, that's not happening. But that being said, there are individuals who are interested. And, those individuals are coming out of the woodwork. I've heard from folks in, different parts of the government who are interested in the topic. And, folks like this sort of have come out and provided additional details. And then, it was great of Mr. Chris Rukowski for the story as well. I had written a story sort of talking about his relationship with Canada's government and military, and then this video was sent to me afterwards, and I sent him an email asking him if he had, received any data at the time about it, and he was very transparent. He sent over the reports, the vital intelligence reports he received. He sent over some of the emails he'd received.
This was Rutkowski, or
yeah, Rutkowski. Like it's fascinating and frustrating that if I were to ask the government or the military for that data, it would have to be through a formalized access to information request. Who knows if they'll find anything? But there is a private citizen, a civilian ufologist, who has this stuff and who actually has been quite a great resource.
It's fascinating to me. You write in your article with Chris, and I quote, "The decision to provide Mr. Rutkowski with these reports was an informal process and was done as a courtesy to encourage Mr. Rutkowski in his research for his fiction novels." What in the... This is coming from the Canadian Transport Canada? They're just sending him this stuff to help him with his fiction? Like, what is happening here?
Well, I gotta say that's seeming clearly they were trying to be as dismissive as possible. This is an individual for 3 decades has researched tens of thousands of cases. He's not writing fiction novels. He's writing books about UFOs.
He does both, though, right?
I think he's dabbled in some fiction. I believe that's a question for him. I'm not sure, but Transport Canada was sending him this stuff for 2 decades. Transport Canada has a emergency aviations operations center, and whenever they were getting notifications from air traffic controllers about this stuff, they were sending the stuff over to Chris. So for them to say this was for his fiction novels is them just being, facetious assholes. Oh, sorry, I can't say that. Like they're being jerks. That statement was a real jerky statement. Sorry, guys, did I just get you off the air?
I don't know. We'll find out from Bill, I guess.
Well, I mean, that relationship just seems almost just a little bit more ridiculous than the whole relationship in the USA when we were giving the reports to Robert Bigelow, right? And I'm wondering, like, what do you think the impetus of these relationships are? Do you think they're just, this guy knows someone in the government and got them to give him the stuff? Like, how do these deals happen?
Well, like I can speak to the Canadian case. So UFO reports, up until about 2000, UFO reports were being sent to a federal agency called the National Research Council of Canada, or NRC for short. And around the year 2000, the NRC just decided that they were no longer going to be accepting these things. Chris had, the way I understand it, Chris had known individuals there who were involved with the UFO files. And Chris just sort of casually or in a meeting suggested that, well, if the NRC is no longer going to accept these reports, he'd be happy to take him. And as Chris recalled it, it was a couple of years after that when he received a telephone call from somebody in the Air Force asking if he was the one who had volunteered to take the reports. And as the story goes, as I understand it, he said yes. And the rest was history. And then, from about the year 2000 until about this year, he was regularly receiving reports. Now, not all reports. Basically, if there was any ones that, showed a high level threat level or national security interest, I don't think he was getting those. But, if there were just reports of weird objects and lights and things like that in the sky, he was either being sent them directly or he was being referred. So, as part of my research, I was actually able to find the Canadian Air Force and NORAD procedural documents for what to do in cases of vital intelligence sightings, including UFOs. So this was a procedural checklist called CL213. I'm holding it in my hands right here. And CL213 says all UFO sightings should be referred to the air traffic controllers, the closest air traffic controllers, as well as Chris. So it got to the point where it was formalized in Air Force and NORAD procedural documents that were housed at basically the nerve center for the entire Canadian Air Force.
So it just says to Chris. It doesn't even give a last name, or Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
His
it says
fax
Mr.
and
Chris
phone number is
Rakowski.
redacted. I should cover up his email address there.
Okay,
It says UFO sightings are to be referred to Mr. Chris Rakowski.
okay. I thought it just
Provides-
ended at Chris, like everybody knew.
That's
Well,
like
but-
that's
and then-
like how the United States Air Force like has a literal UFO hotline that goes directly to Bigelow. Like it's a very interesting. Used to, right?
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Well, and
Sorry, you're
here, and here's another one. You know, in addition to that Air Force thing, we also found that he had been receiving reports or getting referred from 5 Canadian military bases. Like, so there was the Air Force procedure, and then he was separately receiving these things from 5 different bases. In the case of one base on Vancouver Island on Canada's west coast, it says the procedure says take down all the information and email it to Chris. And it says, we do not send it to NORAD like we used to. There's no form to fill in. Just take the info and email it. So that was, for example, up until this year, that was a procedure at a Canadian military base. And you contrast that with the United States, which actually where the Pentagon is funding, research programs. And here it was just disinterest and kind of just punting them off. But, better Chris than nobody. Otherwise, this stuff would have gone to nobody, right?
Well,
Yeah.
I find that really interesting because it seems like they're saying, if you have a sighting, contact Chris directly, right? So there's not it seems like there'd be a lot of chance for them, whoever is collecting these reports, to just give Chris the kind of the ones that they think are going to send them off into a wild goose chase, right? But he's actually getting it kind of from the source, not necessarily a filtered list, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, it was both. It was, there's evidence that he was being referred, like cases were being referred. So if you called up Air Force headquarters and was like, holy business, I just saw a UFO, they would say, oh, here's this guy, Chris, here's his number, give him a call. But I've also found instances where actual reports were emailed to him, just straight up reports were received by different people in the military. And then they were just, forwarded directly to Chris. So referred and sent directly. Yeah.
Well, there seems to be, the biggest difference between Bob Bigelow and Chris Rakowski is, I think, a few $1 billion. I mean, why does Chris have such an influence within this apparatus? Is it his influence, or is it just something where maybe the Canadian government goes, oh, I know a guy, just send it to him?
That's it. I guarantee you that's what happened. And then it just gained momentum over the years.
I think it was a little more than that. I think, one, he was in the right place at the right time.
Right.
Listen, 20 years ago, when he raised his hand to receive these kinds of reports, this was not the kind of fashionable topic it is now. It was rather taboo, and not only was he, outwardly and seriously engaging in what was widely considered a taboo topic, he was doing so in a sort of earnest and scientific method, So in the 90s, he had already established himself as like an academic focused researcher of UFOs. And I think, there were few people who were doing that kind of work in Canada, especially as publicly as he was at the time. And he was, doing the right kind of work and the right kind of at the right time. He established his credibility. And when the military said, well, we don't want these reports, maybe we should give them to someone, he was, luckily, they thought of him. Had they not, the Canada just wouldn't have done anything with this stuff as far as I'm concerned. Right. So, I think it was a deserved position. I don't, now I think we've entered in a sort of, a new era and hopefully a sort of a new paradigm about, UFOs and UAP, where instead of them just quietly being sent to one individual, it would be great if we had some sort of formalized system in Canada where these reports could be, be accessible to anyone who wanted to research them seriously. Right. Chris right now is the gatekeeper. And so if you want that kind of data and you can't get it through access to information, you have to ask Chris. It would be nice if there was some sort of formalized structure, where perhaps people could like send in requests. I don't know. But it's interesting. And, it would be cool to be in that position. But, he's also indicated to me that in our conversations that with all of this renewed and this new interest in UFOs and UAPs in the media, that he's actually being sent less material than ever. That because it's become so much more public, it's affected his ability to get these kinds of reports.
Yeah, that's kind of a
unfortunately.
shame. I mean, you're right. The fact that at least there was somewhere to send this information, it wasn't just getting buried in bureaucracy. The fact that he was actually getting it, I think, is valuable, and it kind of sucks actually that he's not getting it as much anymore. But hopefully, they're creating some sort of internal review process where they're actually going to follow up on the leads. I imagine that Chris, he's able to do a lot of the research, compile a lot of the information so that he can get it out to the public. But simultaneously, it's probably very difficult for him to do of anything other than relay the information.
Yeah, well, I mean, but like if you look, Chris's main thing in Canada is that he produces this annual survey of UFO reports, and they're collecting reports not only from his official sources, but also through a whole bunch of different UFO organizations that operate in Canada. Like MUFON is just one of many that send reports to him. So his work has been to. Every year he compiles all these, he produces a report, he publishes the data, and it's just lists of thousands and thousands of cases from all kinds of people across the country. And he's been doing that for 20, 30 years.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
Brother. No, go ahead.
I was going to ask, is it just a list, or like does he publish any of the auxiliary information, or do you have to go and specifically ask him for that kind of stuff?
There's always a report that's attached to it. I've seen those reports. Some of them have contained some reports. Does he release the case data on every single one? I mean, you're talking about thousands of cases potentially. I don't know. I like going through his website and his blog. There are some official reports pasted there. I don't think every single one is made public when he receives them, but at least in my experience, when I've asked him if he has any data on certain cases, he's pretty much always come through and showed me what he had.
We do have a $20 super chat question here from Brian McDonald in Canada. Thank you for the donation.
Byron.
I truly appreciate it. Byron. Thank you.
Sorry. I only corrected you because he corrected us in the chat.
That's true. Byron McDonald. Thank you so much, my friend. Great to have covering this topic in Canada, Daniel. Any update you could share / tease other CD and UAP stories you're working
on? Oh, like future glimpses?
Yeah.
Well,
I usually we ask this question at the end, and then we'll get a really cool answer. And then we're like, oh, we've ran out of time. Then we're not really poke the bear on these questions. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure. In short, well, one, I'm gonna be working on something. Obviously, the RCMP off. When I published that story about that video, that was the language was it was an alleged RCM, police dash cam video. I think I'll be working on something based on my interview with the officer. It's no longer an alleged video; it's his. In addition to that, what can I say? I'm actually working on a story right now that provides a little more granularity about how exactly the Canadian Air Force responds and tracks UFO reports. So I've been able to find documents that basically show how air traffic controllers are notifying NORAD-affiliated Air Force units in real time, Air Force checking radar, and providing definitely some more details on what exactly is being done with these reports in Canada, where they're going, and who's looking at them. I guess that's a bit of a glimpse.
Why do you think Canada's military is not interested or concerned where the U.S. military is?
Well, they don't see it as a defense issue. Why? Frankly, I'm happy. The more I think about it, I'm happy that our military doesn't see this as a defense issue. Were the Canadian military to start to perceive this as a national security issue as they do in the United States, suddenly all potential case data can be shielded from the public eye on grounds of national security interests. So, if you're filing a freedom of information request, what we call access to information requests in Canada, they can redact and withhold information on national security grounds, right? Mm-hmm. So, the second the Canadian military gets on board with, the sort of thing the Pentagon's doing, I potentially will lose access to the type of data I've been getting. And like right now, I've had at least 3 different requests to our military, like information requests, processed and filed in less than 30 days, which is like unheard of. with like minimal redactions, precisely because they don't see it as a defense issue. I think if one believes that, you know, most of these UFO, UAP sightings involve earthly technology, then, you know, I think that very much is a defense issue. But a long time ago, the Canadian military, I think, you know, dating back to the Cold War era, the reports were coming in very similar to the ones we see today. And they decided that, you know, this wasn't the Soviets, so it wasn't a clear threat, and thereby they weren't interested. The Canadian military, in, you know, statements to me, they say that they're very, they're concerned about credible real threats. So, you know, a foreign fighter jet or a cruise missile is a credible threat. A glowing light bouncing around the sky isn't an identifiable threat as we know it, so thereby they're not interested.
Do me a favor real quick, Daniel, check the private chat that I just sent you. And while you're doing that, I got a $20 donation from my mom. who's
she sent you a
listening.
super sticker.
They're running around Los Angeles right now with my girlfriend Michelle, and then I got another super sticker from my sister for $9.99. So they're clearly listening to the show. Thanks for listening to the show, you guys. I truly appreciate it. I want to say hi to my goddaughter Grace and my little nephew Georgie. So, and everybody else in the car. What do you got?
Oh, no, I was just going to say something also cool is we've got Chris Rutkowski. He's actually in the room, and we'd love to invite him in if he wants to chat. We'd love to hear it from him as well. But he does amazing work, and then, you know, he's also acknowledged your work as well, and the fact that you guys are both doing it is hugely important. So appreciate it.
And both of you guys, you know, were part of the Big Phone Home, which was really cool. You know, that we got two of the top Canadian resource. Wasn't he part of Tech Day?
Yeah, he was in
okay.
He was in Big Phone Home Day too.
Okay, I just want to make sure. But yeah, I mean, you know, the fact that we got two of the best Canadian researchers, you know, to come on and lend their voices and their expertise and their stories, to, you know, make people aware that, hey, this is not just a U.S. problem. This is a Canadian issue. This is a South American issue. This is, and I put a poll up today in the chat, by the way. I'm curious to know where that poll's at. But the question was in the poll, you know, which continent other than North and South America would you love unlimited access to UFO files on? And so the options were Africa, Eurasia, which includes Europe, Asia, and India. And I think that's a pretty good one because you get, you know, three really, you know, information-filled countries as far as UAP is concerned. Antarctica or Australia. And right now, Eurasia is winning with 43% of the vote. And surprisingly, Antarctica is 26% of the vote in second place, which is, I understand why. I think that would also be my second choice, but there's nobody lives down there. You know, there's only a couple of like research stations and things like that. I'm sure
no humans.
Yeah, not no humans. That's right. You know, but there are a lot of other guesses as to what may be down there. Life forms. There you go. Non-humans. So anyway, where were we? Sorry, we just kind of went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, I got a question about going back to the dashboard videos. You know, one of the most interesting things to me was kind of the realization that we might have just tons of videos that we're sitting on. And, you know, for example, could you go back and get all the other dash cams from all the other cops on that night of April 11th, 2020 or 11? Like, how accessible are things like that to dig in and cross-reference?
Well, I guess the most challenging thing with getting stuff like that is like retention periods. You know, most of that kind of stuff, unless it's being submitted for evidence in a case, you know, usually it's overwritten. You know, for example, there was I was trying to get the cockpit recordings from a flight over Lake Ontario in near Toronto in 2016 that, you know, that took a bit of a nosedive to avoid hitting something. And, you know, the documents that I found revealed that because the plane landed and it was powered up for a couple hours, that all that stuff just got overwritten. So in terms of, you know, that kind of corroborating data, it's a real challenge. It's a retention issue. You know, to go back to some of the aviation cases, you know, for example, if a pilot sees something unusual and they radio into air traffic control about it. Air traffic control is only going to keep corroborating data for about 30 days. So things like, recording air traffic control tower recordings, radar data, they hold that for 30 days. And unless, someone from the government or military is specifically requesting that data as evidence, then it's not going to be retained and it's not going to become part of the public record. So it's incredibly challenging. The only reason that I was able to obtain this video, because it appears that, the officer in question made a backup copy that was sent, and it was through one of those backup copies that was distributed to this individual at the Canadian Transportation Department that I was able to get it. So far, my attempts to get an official copy of that video from the police and transportation and military have all come back negative, or they haven't been fulfilled.
Is that why it's considered a leak?
Well, exactly. It was a video that, in this case, it was submitted, as official evidence to an aviation incident. That at least the one, the transportation agency was the one that got back to me. They said that they destroyed their copy. I still haven't heard back from the police and the military on that one, but yeah, so that was it. It was but I guess maybe I was looking for this video for forever, and I should have just asked Chris. It would I would have got to it faster. He had a copy for 10 years.
Right. Speaking of Chris, I just sent Chris Rutkowski an invite via email if you'd like to join us. So feel free to hop in, Chris. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
All right.
And it sounds like the moral to that story is that you should report your sighting as soon as possible if you have one. If you wait 30 days, the evidence might be gone.
Yeah, but like most of the sightings I've been finding are all things that are the reports that have been happening in real time. So, the basis of about 90% of the work I've done are this aviation incident database we have in Canada. And it's usually like the reports or logs, like, a police officer or a pilot, they call air traffic control to say, hey, do you guys got something over here? Because there's something weird in the sky, right? And the act of them calling air traffic control, that's what makes those reports get generated. Cool. So there might not even necessarily, I don't even know if there's like a police file about that video. I would assume that there is, but I was able to find it, because the officer's story was shared with air traffic controllers. That's the only reason I was able to find it.
Wow.
Do you think a leak like this is going to make your job more difficult, or maybe open some other avenues that you weren't thinking of? Because, you just said if it wasn't for this guy telling the story to some air traffic controllers, you would have never found out about this. So do you think this might lead to more things?
I'm hopeful. Listen, I've spoken to people in established contexts that I'm not, necessarily able to discuss, right? I think my stories, I've been working, very single-mindedly on the subject and publishing on it since about April. I think, the stories, I hope, demonstrate that, I'm tackling the topic in a serious journalistic way, applying investigative journalistic methods to, what has long been considered, wacky, right? But I'm treating it as I would any other investigative topic. And I think, for example, the story of this video, I discussed with the source, how much I could reveal about his identity, and kept it straight to that. And he was quite pleased with the results of the story. So, if anybody in the military has great cockpit recordings of a UFO they took on their cell phone or something, you can send it to me. I'm not going to tell anybody who you are. If somebody says, Daniel, I'm giving you this information anonymously, that's always respected and always trusted.
Well, that brings up a good point. Recently people have been criticizing Jeremy Corbell for saying he has a bunch of videos and not releasing it. What kind of background information? What would you do if you got a cool video? What would you do before releasing it? Like what would that time frame look like?
Well, I can give you the rundown of sort of how I handled it in this case. Once the video got into my hands, immediately I sent out requests for statements to the Canadian Transportation Department, the Air Force and NORAD, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, all asking them. I sent screen grabs asking them to, comment and authenticate. None of them did. And then I also asked Chris. If he had any info on the case. And when I found out that he had the same copy of the video that had been sent to me by the government source, for me, that's when it became evident to me that it was authentic. Prior to getting that additional confirmation, I wasn't even sure if I was going to write about it. But hearing from two different individuals separately that they obtained the exact same video from a federal police officer, that was enough for me for the authenticity.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you digging through Chris Rutowski's files to see what else you might be sitting in there where it was just like, whoa, wait a second, let's see if we can get some information or a FOIA request on something like this?
Chris is out in Winnipeg and I'm in Toronto, so we're separated by quite the distance there. And I do know that Chris is in the process of donating, I believe, all of his UFO records to the University of Manitoba to create a big archive.
That's awesome.
Chris, if you're there listening, am I getting this right? I don't have a physical access to go flipping through and be like, hey, Chris, what's this one? But, when I'm doing my research, he's become like a really great steadfast resource. So when I'm doing research on, pretty much any cases, it's worth, I'm asking him, if he's obtained additional data on them, and he's been super helpful. And Chris, if you're still listening, thanks. I really appreciate it. It's made my work, better and of a higher quality because of your help and participation.
I just gotta say, on one hand, I applaud you, and I think that that's journalistic integrity is amazing and great, right? But on the other hand, it is like if you didn't get that second verification, and you couldn't publish it under journalistic integrity, like what you just sit on that forever, or would you how does that work, right? Like that.
I don't know. Maybe I would have run with it no matter what. I was confident in the source because the source who sent it to me is somebody I really trust, and I know that about the roles they've occupied, and they had no reason to to BS me about this. But that's the challenge, and not only that, it's like all this effort to put out a video that's just another light in a dark background. It's so frustrating, So maybe I would have published it no matter what, and maybe it would have been a different type of story. I wish I would have been able to talk to the police officer before publishing. It would have made it definitely a much different story, but I'm sure there's so much stuff like that out there. But just know that, if I'm getting my hands on something that I think is juicy, I have no interest in, hiding it from anybody. If I get something, I am working on the best way to present it to the public.
Appreciate that.
I'm not sitting on anything.
Right on. Good.
No, what were you gonna say? Rather, did you have?
No, to say I appreciate that. I think that's a great way to approach it. Great attitude to have.
No, yeah, I agree.
I mean, and listen, there's for every case I've written about, since I've been able to obtain a lot of additional stuff, and I plan on, making use of all of it and making that stuff available and presenting it in the best way. Some of these documents I'm getting in, especially the ones from, the Air Force and NORAD, they're just written in acronyms and jargon. You know what I mean? They need to be sort of presented and, but I'm working on it. I've as of yesterday, I filed my 99th Canadian Freedom of Information request since I began investigating the subject. So things are coming in, and I can tell you I have a lot more stuff to write about. I haven't run out of material yet.
So, I mean, you've worked for a lot of media outlets, including, or have contributed to a lot of media outlets, including the Toronto Star, the Globe, Al Jazeera, the Diplomat, all sorts of places. And you're also, one of those boots on the ground kind of journalists for a lot of these news sources. Is this topic do you just see yourself sticking on this for a while, or do you ever see yourself kind of floating back to where your roots are, or has this topic caught you kind of like it's caught a lot of other people?
It's caught me, but this is what I've told myself. I'm going to keep at it as long as I continue to cover new ground. You know what I mean? As long as I have new information, new cases, new documents to put out into the world, I have every intention of keeping at it. I think if I get to the point where I feel like I've exhausted that, and I'm not contributing new things to the conversation, that's probably where I'll go elsewhere. You know, for me, I've been working as a journalist, you know, for about a decade now. Written for 24 publications, hundreds and hundreds of stories. I've written, I think, 6 or 7 or 8 about, you know, the UFO UAP topic. It's like a drop in the bucket in my output, and but it's got its hooks in me, and why it's because, you know, I keep trying to get information, I keep filing these requests, and I keep getting results. So, you know, as long as I have new data to share, trust that, like, I'm going to be working to get it out there. And when the day comes where maybe the Canadian military decides they care and I can't get data anymore, then, well, maybe I'll keep writing. But yeah, I'm in it for a while.
Rather, looks like you got something to say.
Michael, yeah, no, I have a feeling you're going to be here for a while, because I think there's a lot more information to be had.
Yeah. What were you saying, Michael?
I was just going to say quickly, like, and I know I kind of asked this before, but do you foresee the government really cracking down on this? And because, I mean, it sounds like two things are going on here. One, they're not taking it seriously as a defense issue, but simultaneously, it's almost as if they're going, people are interested in this, we need to shield it from the public. I mean, where's that breaking down now? What's the ground?
No, I think it's actually kind of twofold. You know, the parts of, well, the Canadian military and our transportation departments are the two bodies that are most involved in the subject. The transportation departments is absolutely impossible to get quality information out of. It's like pulling teeth. It's really difficult. The Canadian Air Force and NORAD are actually super helpful. You know, when I obtain documents through our access to information requests, I can go to our Air Force's public affairs department and they'll help me understand what's in front of me, because they know I have it, so they don't want me to get anything wrong. You know what I mean? So while the transportation department, you know, tries to shut down this conversation by saying, you know, jerky things like they just gave Chris this stuff for his fiction, right? Like, that's so mean. Like, they were just doing that, you know, to downplay the subject. Whereas if I ask our Air Force and NORAD and military, you know, earnest questions about documents and cases, they give me serious replies. They don't try to sugarcoat or hide anything. You know, it's clear that they don't see it as an issue within their realm, but if they have documentation and data that's relevant to my research, and if I'm getting that, they're going to help me understand it to the best of their abilities. So hats off to them. They've actually been really, really excellent in this process. It's been surprising. It's not what I expected.
I was just looking through the chats here. Okay, so then I know the last time you were on here, we talked a little bit about sort of this interesting gray area between the reporting systems between the United States and Canada. And I'm curious to know what is sort of, I mean, you're clearly concentrated on the Canadian perspective of this because that's where you live. That's you know, that's your life. But do you ever want to sort of dive into and see what kind of information and apply these journalistic techniques to some of the American side of things, I suppose?
It's definitely something that's interesting to me, and I read a lot about, you know, the excellent stuff that people have been writing in the United States. The way I saw it was just pragmatic. When I started writing on this topic, I recognized immediately that there were a lot of excellent, strong voices doing digging in the United States, and that, you know, in Canada, that wasn't as much of the case. We obviously have like established ufologists who've been working, you know, long and hard on this subject in Canada, but there were really no mainstream journalists who were dedicating efforts to this. You know, maybe some one-off stories here and there. Whereas at several, you know, major U.S. outlets, you have, serious veteran journalists who are more than willing to take on this topic. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I felt like just by focusing at least initially on Canadian data, that I would have a lot more to contribute, because it was, I was immediately encountering data that I couldn't find had been written about or published anywhere. Will I, dabble into American stories? Yeah, I think that's on the horizon. But again, it's, if I find something compelling that's new to contribute to the conversation, then of course, I wouldn't care what country it was from. If I get something great from France or Cambodia or Australia, like if it's compelling data that hasn't seen the light of day, I'm happy to, if I get my hands on it, I'll put it out in the world.
There's been a lot of hype here in America about NASA, and they're kind of going into this whole UAP area. It seems less known to people, at least in America, that Canada also has a space program, right? The Canadian Space Agency, and I guess they're trying to go to the moon in 5 years. So they're a real legit space agency. Have you looked into them at all? Is there any news or information that they might have?
Yeah, in my earliest round of access to information requests, I targeted the Canadian Space Agency for their UFO records, and I got back at least well over 100 pages, probably more, of emails, people saying, hey, I saw something weird last night while having a barbecue in the backyard. and then the CSA saying, thank you for your email. We don't really investigate this stuff. So yes, I've tried digging in that direction, but all I could find were citizen reports and cases of those citizen reports being referred to, civilian UFO groups for follow-up. But there didn't seem to me to be any kind of official interest the way you see with NASA and the current U.S. administration.
Well, we've got Bill Nelson, who's a former senator, former military man, former astronaut, and now the head administrator for NASA. And next week, as a matter of fact, next Wednesday, he's going to be having a discussion live with Avi Loeb. And I believe the Galileo Project and NASA are going to start working together, among a multitude of other people that have just been announced to join the Galileo Project.
Wow, I didn't hear that. That's amazing.
And I'm curious to know if you've asked the administrator, the equivalent of the Canadian Space Agency, what are his comments or thoughts on what Bill Nelson is saying and doing? Because Bill Nelson is pretty much, first of all, he's super excited, just like I think a lot of science is incredibly excited about the James Webb Telescope. And if you don't know what the James Webb Telescope is, it's essentially Hubble on steroids. It's going to be able to tell us whether or not some of these exoplanets that we've discovered that we think have life on them, we'll be able to determine whether or not they do, based off of their technosignatures, or we might be able to see pollution. We might be able to see grids in the system. There's going to be a lot of interesting photos taken by this new telescope that's launching in December. And so I'm curious, he's been pushing this idea that, he's been talking about these pilots in regards to Alex Dietrich and David Fravor and their story that is out there and now is leading this conversation. He's been very, very open to this. There is a there. So I'm curious if you've asked the equivalent of NASA in Canada, what are his thoughts or her thoughts? Because I don't know what it is.
Well, and the phenomenal thing about Nelson is as well that he was a senator, right? He had been engaging with this issue before his role at NASA came into effect, right?
Right.
So which makes what he's saying all the more compelling. I've asked for statements from the Canadian Space Agency, and they were just like, it's really not something we're dealing with. That was the statement. I guess I asked them before
Bill
Nelson's latest rounds of comments. It could be worthwhile to do it again. I have a hit list of agencies in Canada that I, every couple of weeks I ask, so has anything changed on your side? You sent me, you didn't care last month. Do you care this month?
Right.
I send those kind of emails every once in a while. So thank you, sir. I'm going to add that one to the list.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would also be interesting, because NASA's, one of their directives is searching for life, right? They're not looking for it here in our atmosphere, but they're looking for it across the interstellar distances. It'd be interesting if, maybe that would be an interesting angle to ask the Canadian Space Agency if they're doing similar investigations and if that's on their radar.
You guys are doing my job for me here. This is great. I got a list of like story ideas. I'll put that one on there. I've just been so busy dealing with all the documentation, especially that I've obtained from the Canadian Air Force and NORAD, that like I've had no time to look up from it. Like my desk is just like littered in reports, covered in notes and highlight. And like that's definitely a great perspective, and definitely something I should have a look at. I'm just really busy right now.
It's understandable. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good problem to have. Well, the cool thing that I've been seeing lately, and I'm not sure if you've heard anything with your ears so close to the ground out there, but we have been getting tagged. At least my Twitter account has been getting tagged with responses from our Big Phone Home effort. I mean, we've had responses from Alex Padilla, from Dianne Feinstein. We've had responses from a couple of other places. I don't have the names off the top of my head, but it seems to be like our letters are working, because we didn't get any responses, I think, during I'm sure we did, but they weren't as detailed and well thought out as some of these newer responses that we've been getting. So have you been hearing anything there on the Parliament side of the Canadian government? Have any other, I guess, the equivalent of senators or congressmen come out and have sort of talked about this in any official capacity?
In an official capacity, I would say no. But interestingly, I know that some Canadian folks did send letters to candidates and members of parliaments around the time of the Big Phone Home too, and people sent me private messages on Twitter showing some of the responses they got. So Great. At least in private ways, people in our governments are beginning to engage. Elected officials are beginning to engage. I know that there has been a lot of behind the scenes educational efforts happening in Ottawa about the subject, but nothing tangible enough or that I can substantiate enough to write a story or speak publicly about. But, those kinds of efforts are yielding results in Canada. I think there are, again, curious individuals within government who are paying attention, but so far nobody has really come out and made any sort of bold public statement like, the way Bill Nelson or Marco Rubio has. We haven't had that yet, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful it'll come. I would expect something of that nature happening soon, maybe wink, wink, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it was
wink.
interesting. Green
Wink,
Street.
no, hold on a second. You just ended a sentence with a wink, wink.
A wink. Well, because we're on radio, right? Not everybody can see me.
Got it. Okay, I was gonna say wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say them all. Sorry, Michael. What were you saying?
No, it's okay. I was just going to make the note that Green Street mentioned something in the Discord the other night about his an interview that was done with Senator Harry Reid, and saying that if don't expect the government to do anything that it hasn't done before. And the U.S. government has been interested in this UFO phenomenon since the 1940s, so it's not weird for them to continue being interested in it. But since the Canadian government has not, I'm curious if that principle will hold true in the Canadian government, where it's never been of interest before and nobody wants to be the one to bring it up or to talk about it.
All signs indicate for the status quo to be maintained in Canada. The biggest obstacle in Canada for your American listeners, like when you think of Congress, you have Republicans, Democrats, people within the parties publicly disagreeing with each other. You have votes in Congress. Some Democrats will abstain, some will vote yes, some will, what I mean? That there's a lot of room for individual voices and perspectives in the American democracy, for better or worse. In Canada, party discipline is very strict. You don't. Canadian members of parliaments and they don't really stick their necks out and speak against the party line. It's rare for someone to come out and sort of spearhead activism on an issue unless it's been authorized at the highest level. The party discipline in Canada is very strict. You know, in parliaments, people vote on party lines. There's almost never any dissent, within parties. It's just a much more conservative kind of system. So, you know, the United States democracy is the perfect ground for, you know, individuals with interest to go up, you know, in the Senate chamber or in Congress, you know, to speak openly about this. But that it just wouldn't happen in Canada. There's no precedent for that kind of behavior. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sure does, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. So quick question for you, Daniel. Are you sticking around for the whole 2 hours, or do you have to go?
I actually have to run. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. Well, in case you don't know out there in the radio world who you've been listening to, that last hour was Daniel Otis, and a contributor to Vice Magazine, becoming, I think, one of the best Canadian researchers on the UAP UFO topic. And it seems like he's hooked, and we're going to have him for a while. And that's a good thing, because I think we need more journalists like this, serious journalists looking at this topic in a serious manner. Real quick before you go, of course, I'd love for you to tell everybody where they can find your writing and your work. But since May, and you've only been doing this for a short while now, but in the time that you've been doing it, do you have a theory or something that, I mean, is there a there?
For me?
Yeah.
Listen, I like to, one thing I like about your guys' show is that you bring in all kinds of voices. You know, you guys, you talk to the experiencers, you talk to the academics, the journalists, the scientists, everyone. I think we have to listen to all the voices. I'm really wary of anyone who tells me they have, you know, definitive explanations for all of this. I'm sure a lot of it, you know, is probably explainable by prosaic means. I'm sure a lot of people are seeing, you know, technologies that haven't been revealed to the public yet. But then again, there are also some cases that are just so profoundly mysterious. And I'm particularly talking about, you know, military sightings in the 1940s and 50s, you know, that really just make you wonder at the possibilities. I maintain an open mind, and I think the reality of this phenomena is that there's a multitude of explanations for a multitude of different types of observations. And while I think most of them are probably pretty ordinary, I'm open-minded to the possibilities. We live in a really, really big universe, right? Mm-hmm. So who knows? But if anyone ever gets a definitive answer, please give me a call.
Well,
what's your email?
I'm sure there's a lot of people that already have definitive answers, and they'd be more than happy to share their definitive answers with you. I just don't know if any of them are correct. That's the only issue. But Mr. Otis, again, thank you so much for being so gracious with your time. I'm always thrilled when you come by the show. Real quick, again, floor is yours to tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, you can find pretty much all of my UAP reporting in Vice. You know, search Daniel Otis on Vice. It'll my contributor page contains all my stories. It's worth following me on Twitter at DSOtis. Often on Twitter, I'm posting documents I've obtained. You know, a lot of times I find things that I'm just don't plan to write about, and you know, Twitter is where I post that kind of stuff. And if you want to get a sense of the kind of work I've been doing, you know, throughout my career, you can visit my personal website, which is www.danielotis.ca.
Awesome. And I got those links in the description below if you guys want to check it out. All right, my good man. Well, we'll see you soon, and thank you for stopping by.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Always a pleasure. To be on.
Thanks as always.
Thank you.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that was the first hour of today's show. Now what?
Let's reset the room right now. If you are just joining us, make sure you click the like and subscribe button. If you are somebody who's listening on KGR Radio, you should also know that you can listen to this podcast as well as the Singularity Lab on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and pretty much wherever you consume your podcasts.
Yeah, and if you're on the road and you want to listen to us live, you can always go to kgradb.com and you can listen to us live. Or if you're, I believe is the home state of the station, was it Indiana?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, anyway, if you're a trucker and you love the show, you can do it through podcasts or through the website, which is really cool. And by the way, again, all of our shows, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, will be available every week here, starting next week on KGRA DB. So you'll be able to listen to us super late at night, which is fun. We'll get that late night crowd and late night vibe, which this topic is perfect for.
We have, I think this show does a decent job of being like that afternoon late night vibe. Like we have the late night vibe in the afternoon, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we definitely have. Well, we have the late night vibe during the drive home.
Right.
From work, so it's a midtown late night vibe. But if you work late and you want to listen to the show, you can do so. It streams live on kgradb.com. And I think this is the best 3-hour block, maybe in the UAP topic, not because we have the best shows, but because partly because we have the best shows. And,
I was like, then why? Why then,
right?
Lou?
No, partly because it's the best shows, but I don't want to be this egotistical maniac. But no. I'm thinking more of that UFO podcast, Andy and Dan. Like their show is so big, is so good.
Which UFO podcast?
That UFO podcast.
Which UFO?
Okay. The other show.
The other show. The other show. Which comes on right after this show. So stay tuned, because again, this is a fun 3-hour block. And yeah, everybody's links are down below. So follow. The super chats have been wonderful. Thank you everybody for the donations. So I guess let's talk about a little bit of news, I guess, that we missed. There have been some very interesting things that have happened. Things particularly, I guess I want to talk about. The first thing would be the Galileo project. So Avi Loeb's Harvard professor, who is looking into our atmosphere with high-powered telescopes and camera equipment, so we can get a really good picture of one of these things. That's his goal. He wants to get a picture of one of these things. I hope they get not only a good picture, but 2 different angles of the same object would be very, very good. But the thing that I thought was really interesting is on October 30th, they announced that they are proud and honored to have Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon join the Galileo project. And I believe they're, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll open up the article here, it's going to be in a what's the word I'm looking for, where they sort of
advisory role.
Yes, correct. And correct me if I'm wrong here, rather, but I'm pretty sure that's the role they're going to be playing. And when I heard about this, I'm like, oh, this is To the Stars Part 2. Like we're getting a redux, man. And it seems like they've attached to themselves instead of to a rock star, and there's no offense to, a rock star here, I think, but they've now attached themselves to a Harvard professor. And I think this is probably what they wanted to do to begin with. And of course, they can't publicly say that, but I'm thinking if Avi Loeb was around that time, this would have probably been the route they would have gone, as opposed to maybe the Tom DeLonge route. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, I think it's an important piece of the puzzle, right? So when we spoke with Avi Loeb about this originally, we said, "Are you going to be working in any way with the military?" And he said, "Absolutely not. We do not want to work with the military because we do not want to get caught in a classified loop," which we all understood. But then Lou, you pressed him and said, "But wouldn't you take information from people who might be able to tell you where to look?" And he said yes. So I'm actually not surprised that he's teaming up with these guys. And remember, the Galileo project has only raised $3 million. That's not a lot of money when you're looking at, extremely expensive telescopes. You're looking to triangulate those telescopes. So you need multiple telescopes for each site. And then in addition to that, once by the time you're at 4 or 5 sites, that money's gone. So somebody,
and also staffing, like there's a lot that we're not thinking about. That, I mean, it's just like, that's why I said I think he needs $100 million to at least.
Right. Well, and that's the other piece of this puzzle. So you have Elizondo, who can help them with direction, or Mellon, and then you have Mellon, who is extremely well connected and has a huge chunk of change. Now, my biggest concern about Elizondo and Mellon contributing to this project was it's almost like the separation of church and state, right? And so now you have this mixture of different types of people who are going about disclosure in different ways. And Galileo project was always supposed to be a very scientific endeavor. So do I think that's been compromised by this? No, but it certainly makes me concerned.
I got as you were saying that, I kind of got an idea. Everybody said. If we did another phone home, I would love for at least maybe part of it to be concentrated on trying to get a billionaire to donate to Galileo, like Elon Musk. I mean, because just the other day in the news, they were talking about him donating to end world hunger. Because I guess somebody had put in an article that, with just $80 billion or $60 billion, Elon Musk could end world hunger. And he could easily pay for that. And Elon Musk's response, and I thought it was a good one, well, show me a plan. Show me where the money's going to go and how it's going to be spent, and I'll give it to you. Not knowing that, I don't know if
no,
it would be. I only because I think the money wouldn't go to the right places. Truly, like I truly believe there would be so much waste if you wrote the UN a $60 billion check to solve world hunger. Like
the
it's
bureaucracy,
such a complicated,
yeah,
it's such a complicated thing, especially when you get to countries like Africa, where every single country in there or nation in there is very difficult to deal with from a political aspect in regards to helping the people, especially if it's run by a warlord.
Yeah. Billionaires cutting checks to solve our problems isn't the solution we should be relying on. But I think I agree with you that it might be a good solution for Avi Loeb's funding problems.
Yeah, to me, it's all about systems, right? You need good systems. You can't just throw money at a problem, because then it hits the wall and it falls down. Without good distribution methods, without non-corrupt bureaucracies, it's very, very difficult. And so, if you're relating this back to the Galileo project, what could be done here? And I think that I think Avi's laid out pretty clearly what could be done. So I don't have an issue with him taking money from a billionaire. If anybody's gonna have a system in place, it's Avi Loeb, right?
Mm-hmm. And two corrections here. You're right. Africa's not a country. I called it a country. I meant continent. And it was 6 billion, not 60. Either way, he could throw either amount at the wall, and it wouldn't be. It would be like taking a $20 bill out of your and I wallet. Like it would.
We should also
drop in the bucket.
Right. We should also say that all African countries are not run by warlords as well.
No, I said some.
Okay.
Yeah, no, obviously not all African countries are run by warlords. I'm just saying there are different parts of the world are going to have different politics that you're going to have to deal with, and that's why I think Elon. Right. That's why I think Elon Musk had the response that he has. Like, hey, show me that you can do this. Give me a plan, and I would have no issue. And I don't think he would have an issue. And I kind of agree with what Rather's saying. Are we in the kind of society where we ask billionaires now for money to fix our problems? Part of me says yes.
I don't have a problem asking billionaires as long as you have a plan.
Problem with it. Yeah, I mean, they take advantage of our subsidies. We anytime they want to do new research, with us, the taxpayer provides that leeway. So yeah, I don't have an issue with it, and it's their prerogative whether or not they want to. That's completely up to them. I'm not looking here to force anybody's hand, but if somebody's genuinely interested in ending a problem like world hunger, why wouldn't you go through, the people who have the means to do it without having to go through a government entity?
Well, you make a strong argument about the bureaucracy and going through government entities to do it. It's almost like the idea of trying to install a democracy in the Middle East. Right. You can't just force these problems. You can't solve these problems with force or money. You have to have systems and methods.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Rather?
Yeah, I don't want to get into a political debate.
Let's get into a political debate, Rather.
Instead of relying on billionaires, I think we should try to shape society so we don't have these problems, so we don't have to rely on billionaires, right? No, I think that it's too late, too far.
At the same time, look, I think billionaires are needed, while at the same time they also need to be regulated, because the problem that we're having with shaping our society, like you said, is that the billionaires give money to the politicians, and then the politicians write the laws that favor the billionaires. So, like, for example, Jon Stewart pointed this out beautifully. You've got one of the largest corporations in Walmart who employs a very big chunk of this country as far as the workforce is concerned. But they've also got the largest workforce that apply to social
welfare and all
welfare, SNAP programs for food, Medicare, Medicaid. And so they are taking advantage of the taxpayer and at the same time turning out billions and billions of profits. So, like there is a line there where we can have the conversation, but I totally agree with you. Like, I think that the way society looks at these things needs to be changed and corrected before, things like that could really have massive, substantial effects on society.
Yeah, I guess kind of speaking of billionaires spending a bunch of money, I think we missed a super chat from John Music yesterday, kind of on topic. He was asking.
Well, thank you, John Music. I'm sorry we missed the super chat.
Our thoughts on Avi and if he's wasting time and that Russian's money. I think he's talking about the Russian who's funding the breakthrough project over there in Russia by looking through telescopes when they're already here. And so I think that John, I don't think that they're looking through telescopes, right? They're trying to look. I guess I don't know the exact mechanism that they're doing it, but they're not looking outwards. They're looking at the atmosphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Are you talking about the Russian project?
Well, the Avi Loeb's project. So John Music is kind of postulating that we're looking through telescopes and trying to waste people's money by looking out when we should be looking here. At least.
Well, they're doing both. The Galileo project is using those telescopes to look into low atmosphere, as well as, and their secondary approach is to look for Oumuamua-like objects. So they're doing both. That's the idea.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say I don't think that has any intention of wasting anyone's time or money. I think that Avi is legitimately looking for what he says he's looking for.
Yeah, and I don't think bringing these kinds of names into the fold is a bad idea either. You know what's funny? Stephen Greenstreet put his name into the hat. He's like, you want somebody that's objective to look at this stuff with you guys? I would love to put my name in the hat to join the Galileo project. And I'm like, hell yeah. But then again, I don't know if... I mean, Avi Loeb's not on Twitter, but the Galileo project itself is. And Stephen Greenstreet, I love you to death, but man, you can be, I love your humor because it's dark, it's funny. For me, I'm absolutely in love with it. But some people, like from, say, I don't know, Harvard, might find it a little off-putting. But I think he would be perfect for that collaboration.
Well, and he's not the only skeptic. That Mad Scientist podcast is a contributor on the Galileo project. Yep. Who's also in our Discord. Go say hi. So I think there's a huge opportunity here when it comes to getting folks who are skeptics on there as well. I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great thing that Avi Loeb bringing Elizondo and Mellon in. If you look at Elizondo is affiliated with this company called Skyfort, right? And if you look at their kind of mission here, they're trying to tie together the academic community to the military community and to the internet community. So I think that is kind of important.
Community. Yeah, they want to do infotainment as well.
Yeah, my guess is that Elizondo and Mellon are kind of working on these links, right, to kind of share information and get the infrastructure set up. Not necessarily the people that are going to be deploying the scientific instruments and analyzing the data. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be done, and they're great for some of it.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, are you guys hearing the Discord bleeps?
At all? Yes, that might be me.
Okay, all right. I just want to.
I'll figure it out.
All right. We've got a $5 donation from the GOAT. What if the project is a layup for possible James Webb Telescope discoveries? What do you think, Rather?
Well, I don't totally understand what he means by that. Is they think that James Webb Telescope is going to discover stuff, and then the Galileo project is going to be there to kind of verify and.
I mean, it is a group of science. I mean, maybe that's what he means. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe you could specify without putting another dollar in the GOAT, and we'll look out for that chat. But yeah, I mean,
I do think the James Webb Telescope is going to find some interesting stuff, and it's going to elevate this discussion to the next level.
Do you think if that discovery is made, that the people at NASA would need a Galileo project to sort of to
Yeah.
back this up. Do you think really? I mean, because
Well-
you'd have NASA and you'd have the federal government, and then I'm sure you'd have scientists within that apparatus looking at it. So would they have to turn to then Galileo and be like, hey guys, can you please verify this for us? I mean, they're probably going to do it anyway, right?
Well, I mean, I think the James Webb Telescope is most likely to discover life on a planet, light years away from us, right? So once that discovery is made, the next question is going to be, are those people here, right? And the James Webb Telescope isn't going to be able to answer that. It's going to take these atmospheric scientists, looking at the atmosphere to determine if they've made it back here to Earth.
Right. James Webb is purely looking for biosignatures or also technosignatures?
Well, I mean, I think it's just looking for, looking for anything, not just those two, but looking for astronomy, science. It has a
sure. Yes, absolutely. I was just in reference to looking for life. I was just curious if they were looking for both bio and tech. I don't remember.
I think they're mostly biosignatures are the easier ones to pick up on, and presumably is what they'd focus on, I think.
I'm assuming if they get biosignatures that look promising, then they'll maybe focus on it to look at possibly seeing some technosignatures. I mean, I know this.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah, the telescope is going to have the capability of seeing before the Big Bang, being able to go far back enough in time to see if there was light before the Big Bang, and that's wild. I'm still like almost kind of like what Chris Lato said yesterday on your show. I'm like, yeah, I don't believe it. I don't think, we've only had the use of telescopes for 600 years, and which is such a small time in the vast human history, let alone, entire universe's history. It's not even a blink of an eye. And so this thought of like, yeah, we've got this telescope that's going to give us all the answers. And I don't think that's right. It's going to be difficult. Very difficult.
It's going to raise a bunch of new questions.
That's right.
You're right. I think it's going to raise a bunch of new questions, which is okay. That's a good thing. But I just hope we don't get this. I guess what I'm trying to do is manage expectations on this telescope, because everybody's super hyped about it. But I also want people to realize that, hey, this is going to be on the same level of finding atmospheric life on one of the moons of what was it, Venus? This last year, where they found in the atmosphere of one of the moons.
Hey, I think Neptune or
Neptune. There. Yeah, it's one of these moons where they found essentially biosignatures, a form of life that would exist on Earth in a certain form, in a certain atmosphere on our planet. And I think it's going to be in that realm. Like, they're going to find microorganisms. They're going to find, I don't know if they're going to find, the city grid or the pollution or, like we
Dyson sphere.
I say, manage the expectations so that way when they don't find the Dyson sphere, it's okay. We could still take the information that it is bringing in and really look at it. And Mr. Calhoun with a £5 donation, thank you so much, says bring in Mick West to Galileo. I don't disagree, but I think Mick West, and you might disagree here rather, but I think Mick West, like Alex Dietrich said, and he's lessened this, but he's been an aggressive skeptic.
I think that's what you need.
I think that's what you need too, but you could also not be such a resting Mick face about it, if you know what I mean.
Sure, but I think that
it's Twitter, dude. It's Twitter. Like everybody gets misconstrued on Twitter.
For sure. No, it is too. It is true. And but I think I do believe he would be a great addition to that team. Because we do need an aggressive skeptic, but we don't need a jerk, so to speak. And I'm not calling Mick West a jerk. I'm just saying some people think
sounded like you were.
Hey man, if any show in the UAP community talks and interacts more with Mick West than us and gives him the proper respect and credit that he deserves, because he's done phenomenal work And every time I see something interesting or weird, Bill was playing that video for us before the show. And I'm like, oh yeah, Mick West debunked it. He had the flight records. He had exactly the plane that it was on, the seat that the kid was sitting in, whoever filmed it. He does good work. He does good work. But I just, again, I don't know if in a room full of free thinkers, if he would be willing to be a free thinker, even if it was only for 5 minutes.
Well, I don't think that's his role, right? At the end of the day, if you want the best thinker, you want the best, and that's what science is all about. It's the best thinkers making hypotheses and poking the shit out of each other's and poking the crap out of each other's hypotheses. You have to. I mean, that's the scientific method. That's what peer review is all about.
Right. Yeah, there's really no room for being nice in the scientific analysis of
it's
things,
a murder board.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's a murder board. Yeah, I mean, I get what you guys are saying. I guess just I don't know. I want to work with someone fun. You know what I mean?
That's fair. I get it.
I want to work with someone who's skeptical.
Yeah, I don't want the people that are finding the most important. I don't want the people finding the most important questions in this world just getting together and having fun at work, right? I want them to be challenging each other.
Well, then you're at the wrong show, rather.
The wrong show, rather. I think I stand corrected. I would, like I said, I would definitely want him as part of the team, and I'm curious what the discussions are behind the scenes. I wonder what a Lou Elizondo or Christopher Mellon would say to the idea if it was pitched. Hey, should we bring Mick in? I think, and I'm wondering if Mick would even accept, because Mick is also really nah, I got Metabunk, I got my own thing. I'll wait for you guys to give me the info so that I can tear it apart. Because either way, I'm gonna do it. Whether I'm part of the Galileo project or I'm not.
But that sentiment, Lou, about would these people, what would they think about Mick coming on board? People are having those exact same questions with Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon coming on board, right?
They are.
And I think that those questions are. It doesn't matter what your personal opinion is or your personal belief. Let's get to the science of it and figure what it's out. And I think that's what they're doing.
Speaking of personal beliefs, I think Tina wants to make sure that John Music gets heard here. He's saying that the non-humans are here and have been here for a long time. Could Avi handle that truth? And would he say it openly on TV and to his colleagues? If he had the proof, I guarantee Avi would say it.
Well, he's saying that Oumuamua is interstellar without much evidence, right? I think that he would.
Yeah,
I agree.
John Music, well, he put a $10 donation in here. Thank you so much, my friend. And again, apologies for missing the question the other day. If Mellon/Elizondo show Avi definitive data, evidence videos showing the non-humans here, and then tell him why and for how long they've been here, would Avi openly discuss it on CNN? And yeah,
I think that's a different question, right? Well,
is
it? Definitive. I mean, if that's classified stuff, because presumably Mellon and Elizondo, if they have this evidence, they're not showing us, right? So it would be presumably
but if
classified.
A public entity found the evidence of it without the permission, that's the whole point of the Galileo project,
right? But the question is permission. The question is, if Mellon Elizondo show Avi definitive data evidence videos showing the non-humans.
Okay. Then I misunderstood. No, I don't think he would do it because I mean, he said that.
Yeah,
he said that.
I don't even think he'd look at it.
Yeah. He said that on the Singularity Lab. Yeah, he wouldn't even. I think he'd look at it. I just don't think he'd put it into the data.
Sure.
But I am curious because, like you said earlier, but if these same people were telling him where to look and what instruments to look with, would he then take that advice? And I think he would. That's at least
literally what it says on the Galileo Project website. It says, we are going to look in the direction Elizondo and Mellon tell us to look. That is what it says.
Right.
I mean, that's a little bit weird too, right? Because that kind of opens them up to manipulation by Elizondo and Mellon.
Bro, that's what everyone's freaking out about.
Right. That's what everybody's freaking out about. But look, if let's say if it's properly funded, right, and you got multiple sites, then that means you could run multiple tests and do different techniques at these multiple sites and see what works. you know.
And then if they only find the weird anomaly on the site that Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo told them to set up, it'd be hard to accept those results.
Yeah.
Okay, so wait a second. I don't understand what you're saying. If you're saying that Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon gave hinted to Avi Loeb and Galileo Project, hey, this is where I would look. This is the telescope I would use. This is the instrument I would do it in. And then they implement that technique at, say, 3 sites, and they've got 50 sites, and they don't get really anything at the other 47 sites. But at these 3 sites, they get targets. You don't think that would be corrupted?
I would believe
if they're dropping it would flares.
Yeah. I mean, literally, that's what it would open it up to, that possibility, right? Like, you kind of want to have a closed loop without influence.
But at the same time, they're going to be sharing the data. They're not hiding the data. So people will be able to look at the data and determine, okay, these are flares or these are this. Because if you have that technique that works at 3 sites, then you can apply that technique to, other sites at random, and then see what happens, and then share the results and let the murder board commence.
I do agree. I'm more comfortable with Lou Elizondo and Mellon kind of working on the relationships and how, the relationships between the different parts of the people here, rather than actually influencing the scientific investigation. Because, while I think Lou Elizondo and Mellon have the best interests and are, legit and have, the best intentions, there are people who don't believe that. And if, can be shown that they're influencing where and how Galileo and Avi Loeb are doing things, I think that's going to muddy the waters.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, so definitely. When I first saw it, I was like,
really?
I was.
Well, you know what? We should
my immediate concern.
We should get Avi on the show.
Oh, I kind of like the idea
for sure.
of competition too in the area of finding UAP. Like when you talk about, I think UAP X is now partnered with Galileo Project too. Is that correct? I kind of like the idea of them not being partnered and looking, try to be competitors.
Yeah, like competitors. Yeah, no, I can see that. But also, what's interesting is that they also had Nick Pope, Michael Shermer, Ohad Rave, and Nathan Goldstein join the team as well.
Yeah, if you're talking about Mick West being a part of it, if Michael Shermer is a part of it, I feel like Mick West is way less.
At least get an invitation, right? Yeah.
G West with the $5 dono. Do you have any hopes or wants for the next week's event at the Washington Cathedral with Bill Nelson? Thank you.
Now, see, okay, all right. So now let's say we top this little ice cream sundae of all the new people. All these new people are the sprinkles. If NASA joins team with the Galileo Project, would that be the cherry on this sundae? Would we then? Because I think for me, does NASA muddy the waters then?
I think so. Yeah,
it's a government.
I want an completely independent scientific inquiry on this, right?
I want the best minds. I think
both are fair points.
I think this is what scientific collaboration looks like, doesn't it? Rather, this is what we've been screaming for, right? Like, why isn't science looking at it? Why isn't science looking at it? And here we have NASA, Harvard, people from the government, and journalists who were former government officials, skeptics.
Yes, and
when science in the academic community goes about and does things, usually it's like one university will go do their experiment, and then other people will kind of independently go and like reproduce that and analyze it and kind of do peer review. They're not all coming together for a single experiment.
For that though, here.
Yeah, I'm still very hopeful for Galileo Project and all that. I don't think any of this ruins what they're trying to do, but it does make me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's exactly how I feel.
Well, really, I can understand why it makes you nervous, but I feel like just because these people are coming together, right? And I understand your nervousness where some of these folks come from, but that doesn't exclude it from any other scientific entity from putting this research, if they say write a paper, Okay, that's a Galileo paper that it has contributions from NASA, Christopher Mellon, Lou Elizondo, skeptics, journalists that have all come together. They write this paper, they publicly publish it, they put all of the data out. That's going to be open for science to absolutely rip it apart, because there's going to be rebuttals written to that paper. There's going to be other scientists, and now you've got the conversation going on a really big level. And I think that's what this does, is that it kickstarts the conversation, and it's kicking science right in the butt and saying, pay attention to this and look at the work we've done, and we need your eyeballs and your expertise to find the faults in the research.
Well, that was always the intention of the Galileo project, right? And so, but the fear, as UAP puts it with a $5 dono, is people's fear of a counterintelligence officer providing information is legitimate. That's the specific point of contention.
Or like, there's going to be.
But how long can that game be played? Sorry, rather to cut you off. How long can counterintelligence within an apparatus like that of some really smart people? Like, you can only give so many instruments and so many places to look at before they find nothing and they go, okay, you're not useful to the project. You're out of here.
Well, I guess, what I'm nervous about is that they do find something that's really crazy anomalous. And then there's going to be, almost no matter what, there's going to be a contention of people who say that, no, this was actually like the military testing out their secret holograms, trying to fool everyone into thinking that UFOs are real. And if it turns out that, people in the counterintelligence department are the ones who were arranging, knew ahead of time when this test was taking place, and, were the ones kind of arranging that test, then I think that little...
It opens it up to skepticism immediately. And I'm not saying, but it doesn't mean the data went bad. It doesn't mean anything. Like, legitimately, it could be helpful to get their advice on where to point these telescopes. At the same time, the very fact that they're telling him creates it creates a point of contention for skeptics to be like, okay, but they could be being manipulated. And so
we also don't know if they're telling them where to look. Like,
no, we don't know their involvement at all right now.
That's exactly what it says.
It doesn't?
Yeah. That's exactly what it. Let me read this to you. I'll read it to you right now. Hold on. Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Chris Mellon, I mean, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so as research affiliates, Elizondo and Mellon intend to support the Galileo's mission through the selection of sites where the UAP scope systems will be located, and in assessing the societal implications of that data if any extraterrestrial technology signatures or artifacts are discovered. I mean, that's as clear as day.
I mean, and it doesn't sour the whole Galileo project.
I'm not saying
it
does
either.
I
do think it's gonna make it more difficult when the results come in.
It's gonna make it harder. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, man. I think part of this is a marketing move. It's a ploy to get more money and more funding.
I don't disagree with that either.
And it adds, I think, it starts bringing a lot more people. Because what if Neil deGrasse Tyson joins us? What if Michio Kaku joins us?
And you'll have some UFO Twitter.
I know that's really gonna just set UFO Twitter off the deep end. But I would want them part of this. I would want any bright mind that really wants to look at this in an independent way to join the project and make sure that those suggestions don't alter the data, if that makes sense.
At the end of the day, the data is going to be the data, and the data is going to be peer reviewed. And so I think if Mellon being involved brings in money, if Elizondo being involved directs the search, without inhibiting the hypothesis and the rest of the search, it's going to be scrutinized, and then we'll look at the data when it comes. I mean, all of us can speculate for days about what's going to happen, and everybody lands on some side of the fence when it comes to having an opinion. At the end of the day, none of us know, but I think we're all so many people have been excited about the Galileo project. They worry about they feel like there should be silos of research, and so that independent silos can't infect the others, because so often this conversation is a huge game of exaggeration and telephone. And so when you have this happening,
why can't you do both? Why can't you have the independent silos that are out that are not interacting with that part of the data? And why can't you have the silo that is giving suggestions on where to look for the data?
Well, they're no longer independent silos, though, and that's, I'm not arguing to say that independent silos are the way to go. I'm just saying that is the argument against mixing those. Should we bring in a caller to see if anybody else has an opinion on this?
Sure. I mean, yeah, we've got 15 minutes left in the show, or 14 minutes left in the show. Let's take calls for 10 minutes and then we'll close out the show.
Sounds good.
We've got we'll give Bill a second to set that up, and then we've also got the phone number here for you guys. Is this the right one? The UCR hotline? That's not your number, right? That's the right one, I think. Or maybe, or you know what? That could be the wrong number. Hold on.
Yeah,
I think that's right. Yeah, this is here we go. That's the right number. There you go. 855-472-5483. If you're listening on the radio, come check us out. Okay, so he's ready to go backstage. So if you guys want to give us a call, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to call in. Westside 17.
People,
yeah.
Before you do that, before you read that super chat, I just want to remind people that we're going to be live in the Discord chat. So if you guys want to chat with us afterwards, we're going to be going live for about an hour. So feel free to hop in there. The link is in the description below.
Yeah. And Westside 17 with a $10 donation says, but if Galileo doesn't find anything because they aren't looking in the right places, wouldn't that be a bigger setback than when they have limited money? I mean, for me, yes. Like I think if Elizondo and Mellon are full of doo-doo and they give them the places to look and what to concentrate on and nothing's there, then we really know, for me, that's a confirmation of like, okay, like we really can't take what they say and put it in a scientific format. Whereas if, and Avi said, like, if somebody gave him some information that would help him in researching this, and it would maybe save him some time, I can't understand why you can't do both, but I'm for this. I'm all for this, because I think this is, especially if you got like a Michio Kaku to join on board this, I think this is something that makes it to the mainstream news, one of the 3-letter networks, and people start taking this, and maybe you get more articles, say in the New Yorker or a 60 Minutes piece on this, which I think we're going to get a part 2 of the 60 Minutes, because I've heard there was so much footage that hit the floor, and the response to the first 60 Minutes piece was so good that they're going to be doing another one. So I mean, I think, it's like, I can't wait to hear what Bill Nelson and Avi Loeb are talking about in this presentation, which, by the way, that conversation starts next Wednesday at 4:00 Pacific Standard Time, which is when we go live. So we're going to delay the show, listen to the presentation, and then break it down as soon as it's over. So I'm not sure exactly how long or when we go live next Wednesday. It might be 5-6 o'clock Pacific Standard. Just ring the bell. That way you are there, and you're ready to go in case we do that. And we got a couple of callers on the line here as well. What were you going to say,
bring in Byron? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to comment about the National Cathedral. I think that there's maybe a 0.5% chance that they're going to announce that they found aliens. I think it's low, but it's possible. Tune in.
A 0.5% chance. Okay, thanks, Rather.
That's
pretty good. No, that's pretty good. I'll take those odds. I'll take those odds. I mean, I wonder if we should be taking bets on like what they're going to announce.
What do you think?
I think it's going to be more of a joining of forces, personally.
Probably, it'd be interesting if they did find aliens, how they would announce it. I feel like it might be something like this. Probably the president would be involved, but maybe not.
Well, I know you're out next week, Michael. We got Lee Spiegel coming up next Friday, but maybe the following Friday we can have Avi Loeb on.
I'll reach out to him.
And we can possibly get some answers to these questions we have, and sort of and see where the science stays science, and making sure that the waters aren't muddied. Okay, so let's go to our first caller. First caller is going to be Byron from Canada. Thank you for calling in, my friend.
Not Brian.
Hey.
Not Brian.
Yeah, not Brian.
What do you got?
Thanks for calling.
Yeah. Hey, guys. It's always a productive time when I have your show in my ear while I'm doing stuff. And so I wanted to give you a call, your show and your work. It's been pretty quiet on hold here for the last couple minutes, so I don't know if I'd just be off topic. If
No,
talking
okay.
about,
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Loeb would be really hard to deceive.
So your point is that Mellon and Elizondo, or sorry, so your point is that Avi Loeb would not be deceived by any sort of counterintelligence intentions if there were some.
Yeah. I mean, I don't believe that. Although of course Lou has been has obviously been a counterintelligence agent. He's spoken extensively on it. Talked about how it's illegal to, conduct counterintelligence activities against the American population. I just don't think it's credible that he is one still in this topic. That's for sure. So, but if people go down that rabbit hole, it just, Avi Loeb will be agnostic to something until it's a fact, provably.
I agree with that.
Think about that, rather.
Well, yeah, I think that is a good point, but I do think, if there were weird plasma things that the government can create in the sky through satellites or something like that, they might be able to fool Avi into thinking that that's not our technology, that it's some weird plasma thing in the sky. And that, I don't think, I'm with you, Byron. I don't think that's
Byron,
but there's a good chance of them fooling Avi Loeb, but I guarantee you there's going to be people who make that claim when the results come in.
Well, fair enough. The murder board will commence.
Yes.
Indeed it will. Well, Byron, I have to let you go because we got another caller and we got to end the show, and I want to make sure we get enough time for Mark in LA to get their opinions and thoughts in. But I appreciate you calling in and sharing and making Rather look like a fool, because anytime someone can do that, I'm all for it.
Hardly.
No, hardly. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, so
this is so great because I have a very similar opinion to Rather, but you've targeted Rather on this, so I'm just sitting by and watching.
Well, Rather's made me very upset. No, I'm kidding. He's bringing sense to it, He's but yeah, I mean,
there's room for different views on this.
There's a lot of room. There
is, and that's okay, folks.
Yeah, no, and that's okay. And that's very much okay, especially on this channel. All right, so we've got actually two more callers, so let's get them in as quick as we can because we don't have a lot of time. All right, so up next is Mark in LA. What's up, Mark?
Hey, guys. I just wanted to put in my 2 cents worth. You were discussing people that would be, of assistance to, Avi Loeb and some of these other guys. And the mention of our good friend Mick West came up. I would actually hesitate to have Mr. West involved. I quite agree. I think it was with Michael saying we need skeptics. The difference is Mr. West is a debunker. We know for a fact that he's issued false reports about the Omaha UAP because he issued his report and his conclusion prior to the video being released. So I would draw the line at a healthy skeptic. I have no problem with the healthy skeptic being involved, but a debunker is quite another thing. No, the guy is totally unsuitable. We need a scientist, or we need somebody with a healthy skepticism, not a debunker. I'm open to your arguments.
Well, Mark, what I'm going to do,
bracing himself. He's bracing himself.
I'm gonna hang up and let you listen, and Rather, you got to answer this quickly because I know this touched a button with you, my friend.
I mean, if he gets a lot of flack for the pre-debunking that Omaha video, but in Mick's defense, he rebunked that for me. He said that he convinced me that it wasn't just a balloon falling on its own, because he did analysis and said that this wasn't just following the wind, it was motorized somehow. So I think Mick actually reintroduced mystery to that video for me. His pre-bunk stuff I think was just kind of in jest. I don't know if you can take that too seriously.
Well, and I think you already have, I would say that we've already got healthy skeptics on the Galileo project, right? You've got some pretty hardcore scientists that are working on that project. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to bring Mick West in. I just he's fine. I have no issue with Mick West at all. I just don't know how he would fit into the Galileo project.
well, it's also kind of weird saying, and we've also had video game developer debunker Mick West. You know, like I feel like, and it's no offense, but those credentials don't match up with the other people in the project. And you know, again, like we've talked about, you know, Lou Elizondo having degrees in science.
And that argument makes a lot more sense to me than just we don't like his opinion.
That's fair. Okay, so we've got John from the East Coast. John, quickly, what do you got to say? We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Less than that.
Gentlemen, hi. It's John Music here again from the East Coast.
Oh,
John.
Thanks for the donations and the support. We truly appreciate it.
Of course, anytime, man. I want to help disclosure. I'll make it quick then again. What do you guys think would happen if Mellon and Elizondo actually told Avi and showed him definitive proof of stuff from Slide 9 relating to Slide 9, like the really shocking stuff and stuff about Skinwalker Ranch, and showed them, you know, like these werewolf-looking creatures and cryptid creatures, like really scary stuff, poltergeist? Do you think he would ever disclose on TV, or would he keep that to himself for a variety of reasons?
I don't think he would look. I think if there was classified information that he was presented with and he knew ahead of time that it was classified, he wouldn't look. That's my opinion based on what he said.
And I think if he did look, I think he would probably try to independently verify that by himself somehow, rather than just kind of turn over that evidence. I question whether something like that exists. I hope it does, but
yeah. Well, so if that exists, it would be too shocking to actually disclose or talk about on TV. I guess that's probably answers it.
I don't know if he independently found it and verified it without Elizondo and Mellon. I think he would. I think he's the kind of guy that would.
I agree.
I think so too.
I hope so. I hope you're right. And for another day in the future, I was going to ask you guys next time you have a call in if we could ever have Sam Harris on, or talk about the ancient evidence from pre-cataclysm evidence. That's a whole other area of disclosure we haven't really talked too much about yet, but maybe another day.
Hang out in the Discord and make sure we do that. We'll be on the Discord after the show, but we got to let you go, Mr. John Music. Thank you so much for calling in. You guys, this has been a killer show. It's been a lot of fun. Real quick, before we get out of here, want to pay some bills. Want to say thank you, of course, to my co-hosts, Michael Mataluni and Rather Be Squidding. Want to say thank you to our producer, Bill Skywatcher, in the back, handling the phone calls and doing his thing. And want to say thank you to KGRA, DB.com for putting the show on the airwaves. Rather, you got something real quick?
Keep listening to KGRA DB for that UFO podcast coming on next.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to miss Andy and Dan Zetterstrom doing the other show, which comes on right after us. So check it out. Of course, we've got the podcast, which will be available shortly after the show airs, both on Spotify, iTunes. Leave us a rate and review; goes a long way. Thank you to the Patreon members. Thank you to the super chats. We're a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you, so all of those things go a long way. Like, share, subscribe. Ring the bell so you guys don't miss a show when times change, and they do. Don't forget the Discord after the show. We'll be hanging out there for about an hour today. And the link trees. You can find all of these things in the link tree: Discord, Patreon, merch store, every single way to support us. And then, of course, we've got the KGRADB.com, where you guys can listen to us live and check out the archive shows. So with all of that said, thank you guys so much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP, UFO, emerging tech, and futurism. My name's Luis Jimenez. Until next time, you guys, stay safe out there. Peace.
Later.
Do what you wanna do.